Welcome to Chabad YouTube, everybody. This is Yeshua Durkin. Sorry, I've been on vacation looking for a new place to move to. Been looking for a more Jewish community. Baruch Hashem, I'm relocating in Cleveland. I'll be coming back here literally September 7th permanently, and I will continue my Chabad YouTube stuff. I'll just have to maybe adjust to the davening times and everything over here. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. Once again, we're learning the Mimer Hiechaltzu, and it's a special edition, Lessons in Kuntreis Hiechaltzu. It's a Mimer, pretty long Mimer. There's literally 32 chapters, and we're on chapter 8 today. I guess from the negative, you learn the positive. So what do you learn here? You learn how to really serve Hashem. And now we're doing chapter 8. Okay. In the previous chapter, the Rebbe Rashab emphasized how difference need not lead to division. Instead, the development of each entity's particular qualities can enable the realization of a more complete and integrated whole. As he emphasizes in the lines that follow, this is the result of quality of bitzel, self-nullification. By contrast, Sitra Achra, the other side, which is evil, the realm of evil is characterized by yeshus. It's really self-concern, it's ego. This leads to separation and ultimately strife. Now that we got the introduction out of the way, all the above an example, unity and ability to interrelate applies in the realm of holiness, sheyesham bechinas habitzel, which is characterized by bitzel, behu sibas hahisachtus v'hahas kalus holi. Bitzel brings about the unification and synthesis that characterizes this realm. Masha ain kain bisitra achra. But contrast the sitra achra, the Kabbalistic term for the realm of evil. Okay. Shehein bivechinas haperud legamre. So it's characterized by utter separation. Behind mitzad hayeshus shebahem chuli. Welcome, Abba. I'm going to put you on mute since you're not really saying anything. Okay. So by contrast to Sitra Achra, the Kabbalistic term for the realm of evil is characterized by utter separation that stems from its yeshus. So if you're picking up on it, one that is holy is in a state of unity. He can bend the will to others, and it's not only about his opinion, he's actually listening to others' concerns. Whereas Yeshus, it's all about himself. He doesn't care about anybody else, and he doesn't make any room for anybody else besides himself. Dizehu ikar hahefresh b'shar shoybein spherois ditohu dispherois ditikun. This is the primary distinction between the spheres of Tohu and the spheres of Tikkun. Okay. Rabbi Pio.
Albert Steinhauser's here. Albert Steinhauser's here.
Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Pio. We got a new subscriber here. For those of you that are joining on YouTube, on the Chabad YouTube channel, this week it's being sponsored by the Taylor Road Shul, and I put a link on the WhatsApp group. I'll put it in the WhatsApp group too. So he's letting me use the shul, but he's saying if anybody has a few dollars here and there, there's a link to the website to help out the shul, because the shul is feeding people. They're having minyanim, and this rabbi, he's very special. He promised a guy that had the shul before him that he'll try to make sure that the shul remains in Jewish hands and isn't given over to goyim. It's still up and running, and he's working very hard to make it up and running. Right now in the morning, for 1 week more, there's a camp, and in a couple weeks they're going to do the kollel again, and then they're doing minyanim whenever they can. He wants me to help by joining Mincha Marav, and that's part of Ahavas Yisrael. You bend the will. When your will is to watch Netflix and stupidities at your house, but you snap out of it and you go to a minyan and help a congregation daven, that is true Ahavas Yisrael. So at Taylor Road Shul,
Where is that, in Colorado? In Colorado?
No, this is in Cleveland, Ohio. It's a very nice shul over here. Baruch Hashem, I have a plane ticket back to Cleveland on the 7th, day after Labor Day. Oh, you guys have a lot of Achdus in Brooklyn, that Labor Day parade. Everybody's dancing together. I'm glad I don't go there. There's too much unification. There's too much of everything. Too much of everything is bad.
You mean gentrification, not...
Too much of everything is bad, and I think too much unification. An example of that is Labor Day parade. There's like assimilation. There's weird stuff going on, and it's just like schmutzig. I don't know.
Well, they canceled it for the past 3 years, which is pretty cool, because of Corona.
So that's like the only thing good from COVID, right?
I guess. Mark, be nimble. Mark, be quick. Because he's a soldier.
What's going on?
He's a soldier in Hashem's army.
Right.
He's a soldier in Hashem's army. Yes. Yeah, army of God.
Okay. So
That's
soldier.
right.
So this is a special chapter. I was looking ahead just a little bit, and in this mimer, we're going to get into the concept of Rutza and Shuv. That's Rutza is when you have like a complete, unlimited desire to do something, and you have all this energy, and Shuv is when it's contained. So we're going to be getting into that very soon in this mimer. I'm going to see how Rutza and Shuv have what to do with, Hiechaltzu and the War of Midian and Ahavas Yisrael. Dizehu ikar ha'hefresh b'sharshoy bein spherois detohu lispheros ditikun. This is the primary distinction between the spheres of tohu and the spheres of tikkun. So remember, Sitra Achra, the other side, the forces of evil, it's all about division. Kedusha, on the other hand, it's all about self-nullification. It's all about bittul. So the spheros, the tohu, hayu, bivchinas, ana, and loich davka. The spheros of tohu were characterized by an attitude of self-orientation each declaring, I will rule. Ani v'lo acher chuli, I and no other. That's a problem if you think about it. You have a shul, you have two rabbis in the same city, and they both have to be the head shliach, and they both say, I will rule and no one else will rule. That's a problem. They need to work together, not work against each other. It's not about it's about us. It's about a team. V'gam inyan hamlucha hu b'chinas yeshus v'his pashtus chuli. Kingship also involves yeshus and self-expression. Malchus, sovereignty or kingship, is one of the 10 spheros, as is self-understood. Such an attribute is solely holy. Nevertheless, that statement does not contradict what is stated here, for Yeshus is not necessarily a negative quality. On the contrary, God in his essence is described as Yesh Amiti, the true Yesh, the true existence. Even in the realm of Tohu, the expression of kingship is not entirely negative. To explain the concepts by seeing the parallel in the personal realm, there is a difference between self-esteem and self-centeredness. Positive self-esteem is a very important quality, because if you are absolutely nothing and you don't have any sense of pride and self-esteem, how can you truly have humility if you don't have an existence to be humble from? Only when a person is comfortable and secure can he really think of caring for another. Everybody has to have some type of existence, some type of yeshus. It's just that they shouldn't be self-centered, that their existence is more important than everybody else's. Similarly, self-expression, the free-flowing exercise of one's potentials, enables a person to carry out the mission for which God entrusted him with these potentials and gifts. However, as the Rebbe Rashab emphasizes below, in a full sense, the positive expression of the quality of Malchus is found in the realm of Tikkun, because that realm is characterized by Bitzel. Tikkun, the realm of Tikkun, represents self-nullification, stemming from the influence of Chachma. When the modulating influence is lacking, Malchus, as well as a person's other qualities, will be characterized by self-orientation and ultimately lead to a negative outcome. Indeed, the spirits of Tohu are referred to in Kabbalah and Chassidus via an analogy to the kings of Edom who ruled and died. V'zehu gam kein hasiba ma shehabitul shelahem haya michinas rasoin lavad. Sorry. For this reason, the bittul of the spirits of Tohu was characterized solely by the thrust of Ratzu, yearning for the union with God. So Tohu represents kind of like a fire. As everybody knows, the energy of a fire always raises forward. It's always got this yearning sensation to go up, and that's Ratzu. Ratzu wants to always yearn to go closer and cleave to Hashem. As mentioned in chapter 3, the spheros of Tohu represent lofty spiritual powers. However, at this level, these powers are revealed in the elemental stage, each one seeking its own self-expression without restrictions, unfettering by the modulating influence of intellect or any other limiting force. Realizing that they had emanated from God's light, they each sought to return to that source without anything holding them back. The paradox of the realm of Tohu, that on one hand, its spheros were characterized by intense bitzel, while conversely, it is the source of Yeshus, and it can be explained based on a mimer of the Rebbe Marash, who paraphrases a teaching of our sages in Chulin 108b regarding kashrus. Since it is occupied in absorption, it does not release. Thus, since the spheres of Tohu were occupied entirely with their absorption in the essence of the Ein Sof, they do not release. They do not release influence. An example, because these spheros cling to the Ein Sof, God's essence, and realize that He is a true being. God is the true existence. Their own being is subsumed in His light, and they do not feel themselves as independent entities. So when you are truly bittul to Hashem, you don't feel like a yesh. You just feel like you're one with Hashem. You literally only feel Hashem. You realize that ain't oid milvada. There's nothing in this world besides Hashem. Because what's this book? What's this table? What's this cup? Nothing but a creation from Hashem. Thus, because the sphere also
Did you all realize that Josh Durkin is in a Shul?
I'm in a Shul. See?
He finally got his own synagogue to teach. Wow, Baruch Hashem, I'm very happy for you.
It's not my synagogue. I'm just using someone else's. They all try to rush out Marv before the stars even come out, and I have the opportunity to teach, so I'm teaching it. Wouldn't you do the same thing, Chaim, if you had this opportunity? All these empty shuls?
Yeah, that's great.
Anyways.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Right.
Perfect. Let's do this.
So, yeah, I got... Tuesday, I'm going to go to a Fabrengen for Chabad, though. They're going to do a Sikha. Anyways, back to the mimer. What is that, Stewie? Oh, Sarah. Okay. Anyways, one that's completely nullified to Hashem does not feel his own existence if he's that nullified. Like people were so amazed by the Rebbe, all the miracles that were happening, and what did the Rebbe say? He said, "It's not me, it's Hashem." Not to say, God forbid, that he's Hashem, but he was so nullified. The Rebbe's so nullified to Hashem that he feels that he's just acting on behalf of Hashem. There's no contradiction. So, since all existence is an emanation of godly light and not a truly independent entity, two fundamental dynamics operate simultaneously within it. On one hand, the light is extending outward, creating an existence that has, at least on the surface, an independent identity. Simultaneously within it. On the other hand, the light is extending outward, creating an existence that has, at least on the surface, an independent identity. Simultaneously, since it is an expression outside its source, it is naturally drawn to its source and continually feels an inherent tendency to return to it. These two dynamics are constant like breath for a human being or animal, which is characterized by inhaling and exhaling. These dynamics produce two tendencies in the existence brought into being by that light, described by the Kabbalists with the terms Rutza and Shuv. Never heard of it like this. Inhale, exhale is Rutza and Shuv. You breathe in, you breathe out, that's Rutza and Shuv. Rutza refers to the desire within an entity to return to its source, and Shuv to its tendency to feel its own identity. In Avodah, divine service, Rutza refers to desire to cling to God because one is aware of his greatness and desires to be one with him. Shuv refers to the awareness that God's intent in creation is to bring about a dwelling in the lowest realms, and accordingly, one focuses on drawing down godliness into those lowly realms and making them fit to be his dwelling. V'hainu kayadua shebechinas ratzoin enoi bittul amiti. As is well known, Ratzu is not an expression of true bittul, although Ratzu reflects a desire to cling to God. It does not reflect a complete sense of bittul, kim hergesh atzmoi chuli, but stems from feeling of self. On a basic level, Ratzu seems from the entity's natural desire to return to its source. In Avoda, it is aroused by the awareness of God's greatness. That motivates a desire to unite with Him. In both instances, even though the entity or the person will, to a certain extent, rise above itself or himself, that very self-transcendence is an expression of the entity's or the person's selfhood. Ve'ikar habitul bivechinas hashur davka. Fundamentally, bittul is expressed by the quality of shuv. Instead of seeking to cling to its source, the entity aligns itself with the godly thrust towards downward expression. In Avoda, one commits itself. Can you guys stop screaming or whatever you guys are doing? Okay. Now, you guys, this is being recorded, so every time you guys do that screaming, it's going to go on all the videos. Okay. So, Rutsa stems from the entity's natural desire to return to its source. In Avoda, it is aroused by the awareness of God's greatness that motivates a desire to unite with Him. In both instances, even though the entity of the person will, to a certain extent, rise above itself or himself, that very self-transcendence is an expression of the entity's or the person's selfhood. V'ikar habitul hu bivechinas hashoiv davka. Fundamentally, bittul is expressed by the quality of shuv. Instead of seeking to cleave to its source, the entity aligns itself with the godly thrust towards downward expression. In Avoda, one commits himself to God's intent to establish a dwelling in the lowest realm, and therefore focuses on living in the context of that realm. I think if you think about it, why would Shov be the level of Bitzel? Because if it's just only about you and the Abishur and it's not about your fellow Jew, then you're kind of missing the whole point. It's like you're cleaving, you're davening. It's just you. You're not thinking about the minion. You're not thinking about your fellow Jew. You're not going out into the world to do mitzvahs to make a dwelling place. It's just you and the Abishur. You get in such a devekus and such intensity that you leave this world. And that's not the point. The point is to want to cleave to Hashem, but not overdo it. You still got to put the rutzah, the cleaving to Hashem, into shuv. It has to be contained. So v'zehu loy haya bisfiros ditohu mitzad hayesh shebahem. The yeshes of the spheres of tohu prevented them from expressing the bittul of shuv. V'lachein hayu b'vechinas anfin mispardin chuli. Therefore, they remain separate branches. An example, they did not interrelate with each other. Because the spheres of Tohu were characterized by Ratsu, the desire to return to their godly source, and Yeshu's self-orientation, their yearning to cling to God was all-encompassing. They did not have the inner space to consider bonding with a sphere of a different nature. To cite an example from the personal realm, a person who is solely absorbed in giving to others, one who expresses chesed will express that quality without any restraints, without considering whether the recipient is at all worthy. He does not control his generosity at all. He fails to exert gevura. So we got 1, 2, 4, 5. Okay, you guys, we're about halfway done right now with this chapter. Ma she'ein kein b'sfiros tikkun she'ein b'v'chinas habitzel. By contrast, the spheros of tikkun are characterized by bitzel. V'lachein ikaron b'v'chinas shuv. Therefore, their primary tendency is shuv. Since they are characterized by self-transcendence, they are aligned with God's fundamental intent. Shezehu inyan ha'his yashvus sheyesh b'tikkun. This results in the tendency towards stability and balances that prevails within the realm of tikkun. Shehu b'chinas ha'shuv lehoi lihiyos misyashev bichli davka chuli kayadua uchmoy shekasuv b'makoim acher. As a result, the realm of tikkun is characterized by shuv. God's infinite light is settled within the kalim vessels in which it is enclosed, as is well known and explained in other sources. So everything in shuv, it's like this cup here. If you have this light and it's contained in the cup, and that's the cup containing it is shuv. It's not in an overabundance. You could almost say the same thing with the ors of kalim. The ors of tohu, the lights of tohu, have to be in the kalim of tikkun, and it's this balance, this thing that doesn't allow it to overflow or break. That is the level of bitzel. That's the level one's trying to aspire to reach. To still have that vitality that you want to cleave to Hashem, but have it with restraint, not be overzealous. Since all existence is an emanation of godly light and not a truly independent entity, what happened here? I'm sorry, I just went backwards.
We need to sit in the pocket, is what you're saying. You need to sit in the pocket. You know, the pocket. Everything in life that you do has a pocket. It's this place that you're not on one side or
Has
not
a
the
mida
other.
keneged mida, you're saying?
Yeah, so you sit, like when you're doing something, when you're trying to accomplish something, anything like really high level or whatever, you have to stay like right in this zone, you know. You have to be there with your mind. You can't be too far to the left or too far to the right, you know. You got to stay right in that space and this is exactly what it's amazing. Yeah, this is exactly what it's about. This is what we're trying to do with our lives.
I don't know if mida keneged mida, measure is the right term, but it's supposed to be a balance. I mean, anything's a balance. Like you can't have.
Yes.
Hashem made the world that there's not too much good and too much bad in the world. There's a balance that one never completely takes over. Now, when Mashiach comes, there's only going to be light and Kedusha, but you can't have too much of one or the other.
Well, in that case, it's a little bit different because we're trying to shift the balance in that case by our free will. Okay, so that's a little bit because we're trying to use our consciousness to go outside the laws of nature, the way Hashem does to create nature. Until we finally rectify all of it and it's all good. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. So in that case, we're moving forward. It's not, I mean, it can, but in the end, it swings all the way. That's what Mashiach does.
So the yeshus of the spheres of Tohu prevented them from expressing the bittul of Shuv. And therefore they remained separate branches. An example, they did not interrelate with each other. Going back to the last chapter, everybody and every quality has to bend a little, You can't just be just your idea and just your entity. There has to be room for everything else. There needs to be a balance. You can't just have only Chachma, only Bina. You can't just have only Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes. There has to be a little bit of everything. The spiritual Kalim have to have a little bit of everything else. And when it is actually Chesed, Chesed dominates, but there's still everything else bending the will towards Chesed. And then when it's the meat of Gevurah, same thing. Everybody has its own thing, but they all have to bend the will. You can't just have everything unlimited interrelating with each other, because then you crash. Everything has to bend the will. So if you're focusing on Tiferes, everything has to bend so Tiferes can shine at that moment. Because the spirits of Tohu were characterized by Ratzu, the desire to return to their godly source, and yet just self-orientation, their yearning to cling to God, was all-encompassing. They did not have the inner space to consider bonding with a sphere of a different nature. To cite an example from the personal realm, a person who is solely absorbed in giving to others, one who expresses chesed, will express that quality without any restraints, without considering whether the recipient is at all worthy. He does not control his generosity at all. He fails to exert Gevurah, and one that is constantly always giving, Chaim, can become broke. So one needs to have a little bit of restraint, or it won't be able to exist anymore. Masha ein kain b'sfiros d'tikun shehein b'vichinas habitzul. By contrast, the spheres of Tikkun are characterized by Bitzel. V'lachin ikaron b'vichinas Shuv. Therefore, their primary tendencies is Shuv. Since they are characterized by self-transcendence, they are aligned with God's fundamental intent. Shezehu inyan ha his yashbus sheyesh b'tikun. This results in the tendency towards stability and balance that prevails within the realm of Tikkun. Shehu bichinas hashoiv liyos misyashev bichli davka chuli kayadua uchmoy shechasuv b'makoim acher. As a result, the realm of Tikkun is characterized by Shuv. God's infinite light is settled within the Kalim vessels in which it is enclosed, as it is well known and explained in other sources. Thus, the realm of Tikkun is a source of the order and structures that prevails in our world. Umish viras hakelim ditoihu. By contrast, the shattering of the vessels that resulted from the tendency of Rutzu and the self-orientation that characterized the realm of Tohu, as explained in chapter 3, Nasa lamata mitzius hasitra achra bivichinas yesh vira gamur chuli, ultimately brought about on this lowly material world the existence of the Sitra Achra that is characterized by Yeshus and utter evil. Bezehu Sibas Haperud Behahis Chalkus Huli. Division and separation arise for this reason. Bezehu Inyan Kilipas Midian. This is the nature of the Klipa of Midian. Shehu Hamadoin Vihariv Visinas Chinam Meish Lereyehu. It is the force leading to strife, contention, and baseless hatred of one's fellow man. At this point, the Rebbe Rashab changes the focus of the mimer from the theoretical and abstract sphere to the personal, showing how the concepts explained above are expressed in interpersonal relations and in the individual divine service of every person. Oh, Mark left. Okay. So, anyways, now we're actually getting into tangible concepts here. We're talking about this sphere and that sphere, and we're actually getting into something to relate to a little in our own senses. Gam shelo loy shum ra kilo. One person hates another, even though the other has done him no harm. Baseless hatred, siniskinum. V'loy naga b'chol asher loy davar b'chatzi davar chuli. Nor has the other touched anything belonging to him at all. Begam hu einoi choiresh ra alav kilo, or plan any evil against him. Rak shaloi yuchal lesavloi. Despite the other person's blamelessness, the person simply cannot tolerate him. V'hush soine oisoi bisachlis, and hates him utterly. Ad shaloi yachol ledaber imoy v'loyli his rave imadoi bishuv davar af v'davar shet bikdusha v'hasiba lizeh hurak mitzad hayeshu sheloi enoi noisen makoim lehazulas. So despite the other person's blamelessness, the first simply cannot tolerate him and hates him utterly, to the point where he will neither speak to nor join the other in any endeavor, even a holy one. This hatred stems solely from his own yeshus, his own evil inclination, like his own yeshus, self-importance. His Chaim, what's yeshus again? It's when he thinks completely about himself. He doesn't have any self-nullification. It's only self-centeredness. This hatred stems solely from his own
So
yeshus.
basically, he's a yeshus, he's full of himself, he's a bagaiva.
Yeah, he thinks he's better than everybody else. This hatred stems from his own yeshus, which leaves no room for anyone else. When a person is preoccupied with self-concern, like a narcissist is like a full-blown balgaiva. He will see everything in terms of his own needs and wants. He will look at others solely as they fit into his own plans, without being able to find the inner space to see them as they are, what they need, and what would make them feel good. It's only about his own ulterior agenda. That's a true narcissist, come to think of it. Instead, he will constantly view them as intruding upon him. If such a person is compelled to interact with others, friction will inevitably arise. So, almost done. Behu minaged loy. He will oppose another person. Af shaloy asa loy shum ra. Even though the other has never harmed him, like baseless hatred. Ve'en boy shum his nagdus perakti negdoi. The other person arouses negative feelings, although he has no particular quarrel with that person. There's nothing specific that he can pinpoint about the other that bothers him. Rak b'zeh shehu nimtza ba'olam. It is just that the very fact that this other person exists in the world, shebezeh harehu mima'et yeshu soy. So it detracts from his yeshus. It is just that the very fact that the other person exists in the world detracts from his own existence. Because the other person takes away his own importance, he hates him. He wants to be the center of attention at all times. Once again, that's a true narcissist. Umishum ze enoi yachol lisavloi v'soine oisoi. This is why he finds the other intolerable, and hates him. Umikol shekain she'enoi yachol lehischaber imoi chuli. And needless to say, cannot join together with him. The Rebbe Rashab now speaks directly to his listeners and readers. Uch Moshe nimtza ba'avoy noiseinu harabim b'doirois ha'acharoinim b'chol mekoi moish voice b'nei Yisrael. Due to our many sins in these latter generations, such a state exists in every Jewish community. Unfortunately. Sheyesh chiluke deos bechol davar uvechol inyan me'inyanim haklalim uvifrat bidvarim shebidusha kemoy be'inyane harabonim v'shoichatim be'inyane beis hakneses v'chav doime. So there are differences of opinion on every question or issue of public concern, particularly those which deal with holy matters. For example, questions concerning rabbis, shochtim, ritual slaughterers, synagogue affairs, and the like. Also, it could be with kashrus. It could be very detrimental if people are fighting over power instead of trying to get to the issue of making a kosher establishment. Shei efshar lis ached. People find it impossible to unite. Adarabba ma shezeh oimer chaveroi behefech. On the contrary, if one person says one thing, another will contradict him. Uma shezeh boineh zeh mehares. What one builds, another destroys. V'hachiluke deois be'emes heim beirut levavois. These differences of opinion are in fact a division of hearts. The discord between the two does not originate in the abstract realm. Dima she'oimer behefech mizu lasoi. Ein ze mitzad shesichloi mechayev kain. When one disagrees with another's opinion, it is not because his mind dictates that he must. Ki im oimer ma shehu roitzeh v'loi mitzad hechrach hasechel. It is only that he says what he wants, not what is determined by his mind. The person may think that he is speaking objectively, but in truth, it is his heart, not his mind, that determines what he says. What does the Tanya say about your heart doing everything and not your brain, not your seichel? That one must have his mind rule over his heart. Bilama hu roitzeh kach. Why does one man want such and such? V'zeh rak mipnei shechaveroi roitzeh be'oifen acher chuli. Because his colleague wants something different. Dehaklol hu shetzorich lirtzoin ve'lemor behefech mizula soy. The general rule is that one person must want and say the opposite of someone else. V'hainu mitzad haperud levavois. Such differences arise as a result of a division of hearts. She'enam yecholim lisboil zeh es zeh. The two people cannot tolerate each other. Umishum zeh heim minagdim zeh lezeh chuli, and hence become opponents. So because these two people have a different opinion, a different set of hearts or feelings towards something, they become opponents. rivals, so to speak. Like two rabbis in a community who feel different towards the approach of what the Rebbe wants, and then it has to be their way. They have to rule, and they don't work together. And what does this do? They can't develop and they can't make a minion. It's very tough because if the people would see that they were working together, more people would see the harmony and achdus. They would join them. And then when more people join and they see the happiness and a happy environment, not drama and rivalries, the community grows and grows till it's a beautiful, wonderful Jewish community. Ba'al yidei zeh nifsad ha'inyan haklali hanitzrach umuchra chuli. Due to this, the public good, even things that are necessary and essential, are forfeited. Be'enam mabitzim al zeh klal ki ha'ikar hu yeshus atzmoi chuli. Yet the loss is ignored since each is obsessed with his own yeshus. The fact that they can't get a minion, the fact that there's not enough kosher mikvahs, or there's not enough kosher food around and whatever, it doesn't matter because all they think about is what the other is doing wrong instead of focusing on what they have to do. That's the problem. We're always trying to fix someone else's Yetzer Hara, not our own. If you just focus on your own Yetzer Hara and listen to the other person, try to work things out, be friends, that's when you can be matzliach. So the narcissist thinks that everybody has to bend the will to him instead of being able to bend a little towards the other person. I'm the rabbi, I'm right. It doesn't work that way. I don't care if you're a rav. You have to have achdus with the community. Not one person is better than everybody else. Hashem wants us all to get along. Kitzer, summary. Hefresh, the chapter aligns the distinctions between the spheros, the tikkun, v'tohu, the spheres of tikkun and tohu, which are characterized by bittul v'yeshus, bittul and yeshus, shuv v'ratzoi, shuv and ratzoi respectively. Even though the spheres of tohu demonstrate a yearning for godliness that appears to reflect bittul, it is self-oriented. They are seeking their own self-fulfillment. As a result, they were characterized by disunity and ultimately shattered. Such self-orientation is the yeshus that defines the klipa of Midian. These are reflected in the personal and communal realm. Yeshus siba, leferud, v'sinas, chinam. Yeshus is the cause of separation and baseless hatred. Strife arises for no real reason, only because each person is motivated by his own yeshus. Wow, this was like probably the most powerful chapter. Unbelievable. Anybody have anything to say before I wrap this up? Menachem Mordechai, did you get the end of this class?
Can you do me a favor?
Interesting.
Can you just recap the last part?
The purple? Change the diaper?
The whole thing, the main inyan of this is that people that have baseless hatred, their idea is more important than the other person's idea.
Amoshka, why not go to sleep?
They get into a narcissistic mode. They hate somebody because that other person takes away from his own importance. And if people are trying to build a community together because he's not the leader and nobody's subservient to that one person, then he's making a problem for the other person and he hates him because he's not in charge.
Because the other person doesn't agree with him. Of course. What kind of question is that? Everybody's like that.
But what needs to be done is
everybody has that same issue. They want to be right. So the Chassidus teaches you that you can't be a Balgaiva. That's what we're saying. You can't allow your self-interest, your self-loathing to control your Yiddishkeit. You're wanting to be right.
Rob,
Yeah.
I had a situation in yeshiva many years ago, and Rabbi Lipsker taught me the most important thing.
And don't be a Balgaiva.
It wasn't even that word. We were both, I was arguing with someone. It could have been something simple as the bracha for rice. Who cares? Something very simple and stupid. Rabbi Lipsker told me you don't have to always be right. You don't have to be right.
And
In
Rabbi
other
Lipsker one
words,
time told me sometimes you have to forget what you know because it's wrong.
sometimes
That's
the
a great point.
Not everything you know is true, even if you thought you heard right. A lot of times you thought you heard the Torah say this. You're 100% sure you were
Yeah.
taught that this is the way it is, right? And you're never going to change the way you think because this is the way I was taught. But sometimes you just misunderstood something. And so you have to be willing to allow the other person to exist and have his opinion because maybe you are wrong in certain aspects. Or maybe you
Exactly.
just misunderstood the whole truth.
well, the entire
Yeah.
Indian really is: do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that one should compromise their views.
No, we're not telling you to compromise your views, but you have to allow somebody else's views to exist. And that's why the students of Rabbi Akiva all died. It wasn't that they were wrong. They were right, but they didn't allow somebody else to exist.
They weren't
Because
letting.
I'm right.
They weren't respecting. They weren't being respectful.
Like there's Misnagdim, there's Chassidim. Everybody has a way of doing stuff to connect to the Eibush, and they're all right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like everybody has a different type of nusach of davening, and they're all 100% right. There's nusach Ashkenazi, there's nusach Sfard, Tilas Hashem, and whatever else there is. And they're a little different from one another. Nevertheless, we're all praying to Hashem, and just because it's a little bit different doesn't mean you got to make a big deal about it. I had a problem in Colorado Springs. It was really my fault. Rabbi Lipsker taught how to sing B'nai Hiechaltzu, where there's an extra ay ay ay. He'd say you're not supposed to do it that way. It was his establishment, and he could teach us the proper way the Rebbe taught us. The Rebbe taught that song. But my problem is I learned it the right way, and I was forcing the shul of Rabbi Vitzuk to try to sing along the way that I do when it's not my place. So I was wrong because even though it may have been the right way that the Rebbe taught that song, it's not my place to be telling people how to run their own organization. I was completely wrong. Now I'm not speaking this as lashon hora about myself. I'm just saying, like, you could be completely right about something, but sometimes it's not important to be right. It's about everybody coming to the conclusion to do something together. Sometimes being together to do the right thing, sometimes being together to do something constructive is more important than being right on something particular that doesn't matter that much.
Especially because the Abishter is unlimited and we don't realize that, but when we work together, he starts to open up that to us so we never have to worry about what we were going to worry about in the first place, was not having enough. We're going to have more than we had because we did the right thing and we followed the Torah. That's what people have to understand. When you follow the Torah and the Torah way of life, you are actually creating surplus in every society that uses this. Every society that lives a Torah way of life, you'll see the land becomes a surplus that they can actually give freely to other nations around them. Now imagine if the entire world was following this philosophy. We'd have an abundance, so we'd all have more. You see?
See, but the key word that you also said is that working together to follow the Torah life. That means if it's halakhically passed down by a psak din to do something by a rav, then who are we to argue? Like the Litvish having gabrachs on Pesach, or the Sephardi doing the legumes and kidneys on Pesach, Or the
Don't you just
Lubavitchers,
okay?
doing less slichos. They're all
Okay,
opinions of Rabbanim to do it
sure.
that way, and it's fine.
Yeah, and they all were reacting to their own communities. You have to understand this was done community to community, so which makes sense, and that will continue on in the future because each community is different. However, we're going to have the Sanhedrin, so a lot of this stuff will be once the Sanhedrin is in place, we'll have those opinions again on the highest level. So because you have to remember the Sanhedrin, and this is what confuses Christians all the time. It says the Tanakh calls the Sanhedrin Elohim. It calls them the nature itself of Hashem. In other words, within this nature, they are speaking on behalf of Hashem. That's what our Torah says. So when we have that again, it's going to clarify all these problems automatically. We don't even have to worry about that. And that's why the Rebbe was so smart. He was like, just stick to your things for now, because once we have the fully functioning stuff, this is all not even going to be an argument anymore. We don't have to worry about this right now. And you're showing honor to your ancestors who kept the tradition at the same time. It's like anything else. It's like anything else in life. These traditions we add are these little things that make things more fun, like on the holidays and stuff. They finding. I mean, there's a real pragmatic reason to do it. But when we go around with our children and stuff, and we find the bread, those are all fun things that draw us in as a family, and we look forward to them every year to do them. Every year.
And then Chabad doesn't do the searching of the chametz. It's their custom because the Rebbe says that we don't want to give them a taste of stealing. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
So
exactly. So which is to me actually so true. I agree with him. I've seen more disasters in other Hasidic houses over that Epikomen, I'll tell you. Those kids get sly. They can't find it. It puts
they steal someone else's Epikomen.
I mean, everybody's laughing in the end, but still, there's some stress sometimes. Like I saw one situation where the youngest daughter of the granddaughter, she took all of their epikomen, and then what happened was she wouldn't give it back until each one promised her something very significant, and she held to her guns, and she held them up for like an hour. This is crazy.
But when we work together, we cannot sacrifice traditional values. We can't say, okay, everybody, this group over here holds that you can eat treif, and this group over here holds you don't have to keep Shabbos. Like, if it's truly in the Torah, you have to be right about it and stand up for something that's completely emes. Not speaking lashon hora, not being bad. But you have to stand up for what's right. But like if it's truly foundationally right, you have to stand up for it. Not abusing children and the like. You have to stand up for justice. It's one of the Noahide laws.
Yeah.
So if it's truly something that actually matters, then there's no bending, there's no flexibility if it's something that truly matters and is important. But if it's something of a different custom, he said Baruchi and he said Baruch Hu, who cares?
Exactly.
You got to have common sense to what's important and what's not important.
Exactly. Because in the end, if you look at it, the simple meaning of the Torah as you read through with the Rashi and everything, in the end, your conclusion is it really is a book of peace, because it basically just describes all the things we have to do, and most of those things, like the wars and all that stuff that had to happen, they already happened a long time ago. So from now on, we are really left with a world of all descendants of people that we have to rectify. Esav, we are not allowed to eliminate them. It's all over the Zohar, everything. Obviously, Ishmael is promised a great nation. So right now, we're at this spot where we actually are in a situation where we haven't, if we want to follow Hashem's law, we have to unite everybody together. That's it. That's our whole purpose at this point.
Okay, you guys, I got to wrap this up because I'm getting a ride back. But I really enjoyed this class. It was very special.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm going to post this whenever I can. I don't know. It depends on my internet.
Very beautiful.
All right.
I'll see you very soon.
All right. So I'm moving on the 7th. On the 7th, I have my plane ticket back to Cleveland.
It sounds good. Have a wonderful night.
All right. Bye-bye.
See ya.